Welcome to some good medicine, and I'm going to answer several questions that I've been getting asked today. So, one is about boosters. Are we going to need a booster for the COVID vaccine? The answer is not anytime soon, certainly not in 2021. We'll see what 2022 has to hold, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. From the way studies look that show immunity from vaccination, it's lasting well over a year, and I think it's going to go a year or two. The big question is, will it hold up to continuing mutations of the virus? Now, I don't want to continue to spread fear over variants, but they are real. They're now being called by Greek letters, alpha, beta. Now we have a delta. We like to talk about where they came from, like the South African variant, the UK variant, California, and Delta was commonly known as the India variant. But the India variant is more transmissible and it's more serious when you get it. So, a couple things about that. If you have not been vaccinated yet and haven't had infection from the virus, you are vulnerable. And the virus that you're going to face today most likely will be worse than the virus a year ago. So, the virus mutated. We knew it would mutate. It hasn't become a new strain yet. So, it's not completely different. The changes are actually quite small, but the changes that stick around are always the ones that are advantageous to the virus. So the Delta virus is more transmissible, it's a little more serious. So should you be worried? Should you be worried about your children that can't get vaccinated? If they're under 12 years of age in the United States, the vaccine's not available for them yet. So how worried should you be about your children? Um, Probably the best thing you can do for your kids under 12 is have all the adults around them in their life vaccinated. And those of you that are not vaccinating yet, there are children that are still not able to be vaccinated, and you could be passing it on to children. So before we were worried more about the old and the vulnerable, we still have a vulnerable population in the young people. Now, I want to give you a little perspective from that. So I think it's still a good reason to get vaccinated, but I don't want you to be too fearful of your child living their lives right now. I think it's important for them to be back in school. I think it's important for them to socialize and be around people. We just want to make it safe. Now, there was a very good piece in the New York Times that showed some of the risks of death. So we'll talk about death because it's a number that we can track easily, compare easily. But if your child is 1 to 4 years old, the chance of drowning this year is 28 times or 24 times more than dying from COVID. The chance of dying in a car accident is 20 times more than the chance of dying from COVID. So I've talked about risk before. We tend to focus on the risk that's new and different and that we're not used to. We accept the risk of driving an automobile, although that is a risky thing. Um, so, just giving you perspective for what it's worth. I'm not saying COVID's not important because of those numbers. I'm just giving you a little bit of perspective. It's still very important. It's a cause of death that we can prevent. What about vaccines for the children and mandates? There won't be any mandates anytime soon. I don't think there will be anytime for school age. How will they mandate? It would be for school entry. Our government has done that before and continues to do that. I don't think it happened this fall because the FDA has not given the full approval. That we have the emergency use authorization, but then a full authorization comes after a little bit more time, which will probably happen this fall. So at that time, they may be given full authorization. Then the American Committee for Immunization Practices, the ACIP, the AAP, and others will evaluate what the FDA has already evaluated, and they'll give their recommendations. And then we'll decide if that's worthwhile for children to have. There's some arguments there. Obviously, the disease is not as severe in children as it is in older adults. You could also say that there's enough adults vaccinated that maybe we don't need to vaccinate our children. I think those are all things that are reasonable thoughts. I think in all, when you take it all into consideration, it is worthwhile to get your child vaccinated. It is a preventable cause of death. We know now that this virus can be prevented through vaccination right now. So I would highly recommend it. So, is this pandemic getting close to being over? Well, really not by a long shot. Um, our fate in the United States is tied to the fate of the world. Now, we're doing well in the United States, and the numbers are plummeting. They really are. They're going down, and they've gone down quite a bit. But um, Even if we got everybody vaccinated, as long as there is virus circulating in the world, if it continues to mutate and it becomes a whole different strain, it's going to come back here. It came from another country the first time. This is a very transmissible virus. And even if it happens on the other side of the globe, that it becomes a new strain, it's going to spread again. And so our fate, the United States and those of us that live here, is tied to that of the world. It's great that we're sharing vaccines with the rest of the world. We need to do more of that. We need to help support vaccinating people across the world. And that may downgrade this virus to where it's not as prevalent and to where we have enough immunity to where it stops its spread. So I think it's where we are with the pandemic. It's still a smart thing to do to get vaccinated. Enjoy your freedom now to be out and about and to do things and to be with family. I hope you're embracing this time and your family and relatives and enjoying the freedom that comes from having immunity and having vaccination. Those of you that aren't vaccinating, I know that most of you are probably pretty entrenched by now, but it is fun. It is fun to know that I'm not a risk to somebody else. You do, no matter what you think, you still are a risk if you haven't gotten immunity, if you haven't gotten vaccinated to those around you. I hope this helps. Send me questions as always. There's been some good medicine. Thanks.